Hello, this is Abby Mickey, women's cycling reporter for Escape Collective. If you're listening to this podcast, that means that you already must like the content that we create, or at least you're intrigued about some of the things that we have to say. And in order to continue making all the great content that we do, we need the support of you, the listener. If you're not a member of the Escape Collective, I'm here asking you, imploring you, maybe begging you to consider signing up for a membership. It's super easy. Just head on over to escapecollective.com/member. You can sign up to support the awesome things that we do over at Escape Collective, because if you like what we do, support us. Become a member. There's a lot more to it than just giving us a couple bucks, and that's being part of the community that we've created at Escape Collective, the Discord, and high-fiving rights if you ever see any of us on the ground at a race in the grocery store. So consider signing up. Ask your friends. If you know your friends listen to these podcasts or read our site, then maybe give them a little nudge. Encourage them to become a member. Once again, it's escapecollective.com/member. And thank you so much for all the support so far in this journey at Escape Collective. Hello and welcome back to the Wheel Talk podcast. My name is Abby Mickey and I'm here with Loren and Abby to talk about women's professional road cycling. We've got Vuelta a Burgos on the menu today. We've wrapped up the Spanish racing block and we are headed to the UK. So who better to have on the podcast with us than the one and only Anna Shackley?
Hello.
For those of you who don't know, Anna was a professional rider for SD Worx-Protime, but unfortunately had to step away early last year. Anna, how's it going? How are you doing?
I'm going good, actually. I've moved into the DS side of the sport, and I've really, really been enjoying it. So I've actually been having quite a good year this year, just being a staff member, having the luxuries of that, not having nice Belgium frites instead of healthy food at races. It's really good. Life's good.
Yeah, you worked a bit for Cynisca. Are you just DSing for them, or do you have other teams that are knocking at the door?
Yeah, I'm just DSing for Cynisca at the moment. We had a semi-busy spring, maybe not that many race days, but with quite a lot of travel in between. So my March and April were a bit busy, and then I do Catalonia and Pyrenees with them, and then quite a lot of races in July, and then yeah, I'll see from there. If any other teams want to hire me for work, then I'm more than available.
That's awesome. And you get to work with Jillian Elsay, who is my old teammate and is just like a phenomenal human being.
Yeah, I really, really like working with Jillian, and we've got on quite well, and we've been rooming with each other a lot of time. So she gets to spend a lot of time with me, but we've been going well, and I don't think she's sick of me yet, so it's going well.
So is this your first year DSing, Anna?
Yeah. So because I had to stop the sport early last year because I got diagnosed with a heart problem, and then out of sheer boredom, because I couldn't do much. I couldn't exercise at all. I messaged Bob Lyons, who I used to know from Scottish Cycling, who runs a British Conti team called Abla Development, and I did a women's tour with him last year and Tour of Ardèche, which were really good, and I really enjoyed it. And I was like, oh, I might as well try do this next year and see how it goes. And so yeah, now this is like my first time doing it properly, but I actually have some responsibility.
I have a random question. I was at the Junior Flanders over the weekend, and there's a young Australian who wants to start DSing. And I heard that if you are under 26 as a DS, you can't drive the race car. Is that right? Is that a UCI rule?
I don't think that is.
Can someone fact?
I could be wrong, but I did the DS course in October last year, and we didn't get taught that rule. It could be a rule, but
Yeah, I
I'm
heard
planning
this.
driving the car at races, and I'm only 24 now. So
Oh, excellent. I'm looking forward to going back to the person who said that and tell them they're wrong because they like to be right all the time. So that's good.
How is it de-essing at 24 years old when like some of the riders that you're directing are like already 5 years older than you?
it is a bit intimidating. When I first joined the team, I had like a call with Robin, who kind of runs the team, and she was saying that she asked me my age, and I said it, and she was a bit taken aback, and she was like, "Oh, you need to make sure that you have control over the girls and make sure they don't walk all over you." And I was quite nervous about that, but I don't know. I feel like I fit into it better than I thought. And coming from a Dutch team, I feel like I have inherited like the Dutch habits a little bit of like they're just very direct, which I think is quite a good thing in a cycling team for the most part. And I feel like I've become more direct. I've lost maybe a little bit of my Britishness and morsed a little bit Dutch, which in some ways I think is quite good.
I think it'd be good between like as well to Abby's point, you're young, but you've also just come out of the sport. So being able to divide the like, you know, for me at 36 going on 37, when I'm working with juniors, they're not my mates. We have fun conversations, but there's really a division, as in like I'm not friends with them. I'm not a rider anymore. I'm way past have been a rider. They don't even know me as a rider. They didn't realize I was even a bike racer because they were so young. But yeah, I could see that being like a bit of a challenge. But then again, I think you probably get respect points from the fact that you achieved a lot in your short time as an athlete and you raced on the best team in the world. So you have a fair bit of experience for such a short period of time in the sport, I'd say.
Yeah, I think also I really enjoyed that I started working on a Conti team because quite a lot of them are quite inexperienced and a lot of the girls in Cynisca are quite new to the sport. So I feel like I can impart a lot of information and advice and experience on them because compared, even though some of them are around about my age and some of them older, but they don't have much experience in the sport and they've all been really, like I've not had any issues with them not taking me seriously or not taking my advice. They've all been very like wanting to absorb as much information as possible, which has been really nice. I really enjoyed working with the girls in the team. And even Alexis was talking to me at one time. She thought I was like 27, 28, and I told her I was 23 at the time. I was like, oh, nope, a bit younger. She called me an old soul, which I've never ever been called in my life. So must be working.
Oh, that's great.
How was it having to step away from the sport last year? Because it was quite abrupt and like obviously, yeah, you are really young, and I think everybody kind of saw you as this up and coming rider that would have a long future with cycling, and you still do, obviously, with directing, but obviously in a different role than was the original plan. Yeah,
it was pretty devastating. Like it was a full life. Like just at one point I just like I feel like my life is over. Like it was quite a hard point in my life last year because it doesn't just like I lost my career, which was also like it was a dream to be a professional cyclist. So that was hard to get over. And then yeah, I went from training like 18 to 25 hours a week to I could barely go out for a walk. Like I was doing 1K walks and I was really struggling with I had like palpitations and whatnot, and it was also very kind of a scary point in my life because obviously your heart is a very important part of your body, and but this year I really enjoyed like getting back into work and having a purpose, and I wasn't really ready to let go of cycling because I feel like it was taken from me. And I'm really just grateful that I can still be part of the sport and stay in it. And I feel like the information that I developed over all the years because I've been cycling since I was 6 years old, I feel like I can still use that information. It's not all lost, which is quite nice.
Well, Jillian says that you're amazing on the radio. So
I quite like doing the radio. My main struggle with the radio is my left and right. So I just always, it's so bad as well. Especially, I don't know why I get so confused being in Europe because I don't know, like when you're turning on the road in the UK and it's like you don't have to give way, it's a left turn, whereas obviously here it's a right turn. And just sometimes I've only got it wrong a couple of times, but I'm like, sorry guys, right, not left, right. I don't know. So you don't really want to confuse them.
Yeah, you'd have like was Elise Longo-Borghini in the finale of the Tour de France situation. Was it the Tour where she? Yeah, I think it was where she took the wrong turn in the finish.
I'm glad I haven't done any of that to the girls yet. So it's all good so far.
That's awesome. Well, yeah, it's really cool. You can stay in the sport because we need people like you to be DSs of teams. I feel like that more and more often we're seeing female riders go into DS roles, and like the one person that I just was like, oh, please be a DS, please be a DS when she retired was Christine Majerus, and so I'm like, it's just great to see you sticking in the sport and yeah, being able to give back to the riders that are coming up, even if they are older than you.
Yeah. I think it's also because Christine would be an amazing DS and she's a really lovely person and she has so much experience. And she was actually at the DS course in October last year, which was nice to see her there. But I think also Christine's had a long career and you're on the road a lot. And I think you're way more as a DS if you're doing like a full calendar than you are as a rider because you've got all the driving in between. And she's very, and I think one of the reasons she wanted to retire is because she wanted to spend more time at home. Whereas me only being 24 now, it's like, well, I still want to be away. I still want to go travel, which I think is quite nice. Whereas I think a lot of people get to the end of their careers and they just want to settle.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I do wonder how that works for some of the women who've retired and have become mothers during that period. Because even as an agent, as an agent for the women's racing, you don't go away as much as probably the men. But that can be challenging, just the days away at home, away from home. And like you said, with the DSs, it's everything around the race as well. So driving the race cars there, it's a lot of time. We should definitely get Yolinda Hora back on here and speak to her because we had her on, I think the first year she became a DS. And it'd be interesting to hear now years on because she's really high up now within that team and establishment, has a lot of say in, the riders that come to the team and everything. So, and she's got a little girl now that's about 1.5 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think she's a really good example of someone who's obviously she's moving quite high up in the sport, which is really nice to see. And then also becoming a mother as well. Like it's something that I feel like a lot of women always have in their mind between balancing their careers and wanting children. Like, it's what most girls would like. I know a lot of girls who don't want that pressure of having a children during their career because they don't know, even after like coming back from the pregnancy, which is hard in itself, is you need such a strong support network around you to be able to look after a child while still being away. Like for the women, around about like 150 days a year or 100. It's quite a balance.
Yeah. I think that's why we'll never see Lizzie step into a DS role, unfortunately, because she would be incredible at it. But already she doesn't want to leave home.
Yeah, I think you'll see her around. She'll be doing stuff in the industry for sure. But I mean, I think she's ready for that next chapter where she can be home and, she's building her life back home in Yorkshire now. So.
Oh, she said when I interviewed her, like a couple months ago, when she announced her retirement, that she would stay in the sport. But she was very hush-hush about what exactly that looks like for her.
I think she'd be very good in the national program because obviously I think all our national coaches live round about Manchester and near enough there. And I think it also, like most federations, it needs a bit of a change up and a bit more young blood in it. Especially, we don't really have much of a road program in the GB program, and Lizzie would be really good at stuff like that. And yeah, she's very good at standing by her morals, which I think a lot of British cycling kind of struggle with sometimes, or just federations in general.
Very, very true. All right, well, should we talk about bike racing?
Sounds good.
We have just wrapped up Vuelta a Burgos, which is the third of our three stage race Spanish block. So we have, obviously, we had the La Vuelta, we had Itzulia, and then Vuelta a Burgos. And this one was, for me, one of the more interesting of the three because it was FDJ Suez without Demi Vollering. It was Reusser back, Kopecky back. There was a lot of riders that I was curious to see how they would go on the stage 3 climb and also in the first World Tour time trial of the year. So starting off, we had very predictable finish, stage 1, with Wiebes back to her winning ways. It was a little bit of an uphill kick, and there was a lot of action in the final, like 35 kilometers, where we had an attack from Elisa Longo-Borghini. We had splits in the peloton, one that Marlon missed, and I think going into the race, she was the favorite, given how she rode at La Vuelta, second overall at La Vuelta with a climb. And if you factor in the time trial at the end of the race, she was the one I was kind of looking at. So this split happened in the final 35K. And as the riders in front, which included Kopecky, Lisa Longo-Borghini, basically most of the riders that Reusser would have had on her stem notes to keep an eye on, they were up the road, and the Movistar did such an incredible job, like closing the gap a little bit, and then she was able to jump across, and it came back together anyway. But it was definitely like a moment of tension in the finale that was otherwise just kind of, we had a 2-rider move of Steffi Haberlin, who's the new rider for SD Worx-Protime, and Celia Gary of FDJ Suez. They were off the front until the final 1.2 kilometers to go, but it was kind of coming down to a sprint. Once those groups came back together, the two of them being off the front was kind of, I think, a doomed move, but FDJ Suez had no other option to go for the stage, really, and Steffi just kind of followed that move because it was clear that SD Worx was keen for a sprint at that point. Stage 2 was important because there was a crash with 30 kilometers to go that took down Kopecky, who is coming back into racing after a block away. She obviously had, won Flanders, but had a relatively disappointing spring and has been vocal about knee injuries in the winter. So I think coming into this race, I was really curious to see how she would stack up against the other GC riders, especially given that she's had some time now, hopefully, of healthy time on the bike. But she lost already almost 2 minutes in the second stage due to a crash, and it did not come down to a sprint. I was expecting it to be another like kind of reduced bunch kick, but Reusser attacked after the final category 3 climb with May Bjorndal Ottestad of Uno X Mobility, and May took the stage. Really impressive win for her, and we'll definitely talk a bit more about her in a minute, and also a good kind of pat on the back for Uno X Mobility, who, we'll talk about in a second. So Reusser got some time on her rivals going into stage 3, but she didn't need it. She rode away on the climb with 6-ish kilometers to go, 4 kilometers to go. She rode away from everyone else, made it look easy, crossed the line first, and then won the final time trial as well. There was a bunch of riders who had incredible performances on both the climbing stage and in the time trial, Yara Kastelijn, for example. But it was really kind of Reusser cementing herself as a GC contender. She said last year that she wanted to go for the Giro, and I think that it was a kind of a moment, because while she's incredible at time trialing, she wasn't really a climber until this year. And now looking back on the Giro last year, you're like, okay, well, if her season had gone differently, perhaps that would have been a realistic goal. But she's riding so well, and she had nothing but good things to say about Movistar and her move to Movistar. So that was the race overall. I feel like there's a lot that I want to talk about with this race, because there was a lot that we kind of learned as we come out of the Spanish block. We already knew after La Vuelta and Azulia that Demi Vollering, when riding with FDJ Suez and being supported by them, is just incredible. She walked away with the Vuelta and Azulia. But this one, she wasn't there. FDJ Suez had to turn to Labous, who I think we were all expecting to have a better performance. She had a solid time trial, but she fell short on the mountain stage, and she said after the race that her legs just weren't there. So that was a really interesting thing for me to see, was just how FDJ Suez was kind of off the mark when Demi wasn't there. And I wasn't expecting that. I was expecting them to continue the momentum when Demi is there, but just with Labous as their leader?
I mean, I've just pulled up Labous, her program until this point, and like she had a pretty busy spring in terms of riding, I think, every single race in support of Demi, that the races that Demi was at, except for UAE Tour, where I guess she had more of a free role there. But yeah, you're right. I mean, there was the gap between the Vuelta and Burgos for her to have her opportunity. She rode really well in the Vuelta. I mean, ending up in fifth classification with Demi taking the win. So that was a great result by the team, but also strong showing by her. But I do wonder at this point, she did say the legs just weren't there, if she is just feeling the accumulation of the whole spring, because she went straight from Liège into the Vuelta. There wasn't that much time between the Vuelta and Burgos. I'm not sure what she would have done in terms of training, and maybe Anna, you could shine some light on that, as that was the sort of rider that you were, a potential GC contender. So I feel it's a real shame for her, because she's ridden in support the whole year of Demi, and then finally she gets this big opportunity, and she's just been so fantastic all year. And then it must feel just very disappointing to walk away with not the result she probably wanted. I mean, it's still fifth again on GC, but she's definitely capable of a podium, right?
Yeah, and she's won Burgos in the past. I think it was 2023.
2022.
Was it 2022? Yeah. She won, and it was
there,
like a really good win, because I think obviously she was younger then, and it was one of her first big wins of her career. And I think, so I also feel like sometimes when you have such a big spring like she did, and she would have been working hard for Demi, and then you have that time off, like you take like a week off, and you feel like this is nothing, it hits you all at once, and you have nothing left in your legs. It could be a little bit of that, and then maybe the pressure of the fact that this is a new team for her, and this would be her first time having, or apart from UAE, having that opportunity to be the sole leader. Because normally there's her, Demi, and Avita, which is kind of sharing the load of the pressure. When you're all there, kind of helps alleviate some of that stress. And then when it's all on her, and she, I don't know, maybe that affected her a little bit. But yeah, I thought it was a shame as well, because it'd been really nice to see her go well, especially because her time trial was very strong.
Yeah,
and we knew going into it that she would have a strong time trial after her. We mentioned it briefly, but Georgie wrote a really great piece on it on Escape Collective, that she really dug into the changes in Juliet's fit on the bike. She's got like a whole new TT fit on the Specialized versus when she was on Picnic Post and now the last couple of years, and she entered a team time trial in between the Spanish races and came fourth by herself. So we knew that the time trialing was going really well. And I think to come so close to Reusser, who's, European champion and hasn't ridden a time trial in almost 2 years, but is still like, it's riding a bike. Like she's not going to lose that ability. So I think it was still a really strong performance, but for the climbing, like it was interesting for me to see you had Shabby on the front, who's obviously also a new signing and was clearly working for Labous at this race and looking a lot stronger. When Reusser attacked on the climb, Shabby had been on the front setting the pace for a while at that point, and Reusser said that the pace just wasn't fast enough. She didn't need to attack. She didn't need to be the instigator at that point, but she felt the pace wasn't fast enough, so she just upped the pace a bit. And Shabby was one of the 2 riders who were able to follow her at that point for briefly. But if she hadn't been on the front setting the pace for the whole base of the climb, then I think we would have maybe seen a different outcome for FDJ Suez in terms of that stage in particular.
Yeah, I was also thinking, because also a lot of my friends who did Burgos, I know there's a lot of sickness going around. A lot of girls pulled out from colds and whatnot, and also it's the last race in the Spanish block, so you'll have girls who got sick after Vuelta, and they just carry it on until Burgos. And there was a lot of DNS and DNFs at the end of the stages, so maybe there was a little bit of sickness there. But then again, on the last day, her time trial was very strong. So
Yeah, we had Antonia Niedermeyer was, I think, one of the other riders that without Kasia or Neve Bradbury in the race, that we were kind of looking to be a GC leader for Canyon SRAM Zona Crypto, and she didn't start the third stage. So she might be one of those that are impacted by illness, because she rode so well at Itzulia that I was thinking, okay, well, like, this is another opportunity for her to show herself. And I think of all the teams, there are many teams that I think going into this next block of racing are a bit disappointed in how they've gone so far this year, and Canyon SRAM is probably one of them.
Yeah, because I'd say that they probably didn't have the spring they were hoping for, especially last year. They had a very good year, and they went so long without a win. Before last year, they went quite a few years without a win, so like a World Tour win especially. So I feel like they've kind of fallen back into old patterns a little bit.
Yeah, their only win so far this year is Dygert's win at Tour Down Under, and that was, I mean, now that feels like decades ago when you get this far into the season.
Time flies.
Oof. Yeah, seriously. But yeah, the kind of the biggest maybe disappointment, but also not particularly, was maybe SD Worx. They won the first stage with Wiebes, which you would expect. Wiebes enters a race. There's a potential sprint. She's going to win that. And in very predictable fashion, also Elisa Balsamo came second, which I think it was a really impressive sprint from Balsamo to come second. But Wiebes, like, she just can't be beat. But it's still, like we've talked about already with the last couple races, where if for that team, when you're that good, when you are the best team in the world, when you can't even factor in the general classification, do you walk away from the race with a stage victory, 1 out of 4, and call it a success? Because I think that they're going to be disappointed in how this went and how Kopecky went on the climb. She lost over 2 minutes on the climb, and she came 5th in the time trial, but that's still not exactly what we would expect from Kopecky.
I know she came out and said that she was quite happy with her spring, seeing that how tough her winter was with knee injuries, and knee injuries they're really niggly and hard to get over, and they can be very frustrating. But I feel like she wouldn't probably be super happy with her result in Burgos, because she's always striving to be, like, she's a very determined person. She's always striving to be the best, and yeah, normally SD Worx are always the ones at the top and performing pretty well and getting multiple stages and being there after the GC. So I think also with her time trial on the last day, probably wasn't what we're used to seeing from Lotte either.
Yeah, and it doesn't help the hiccup on stage 2, right? I mean, I know she's very mentally tough, but she hasn't had the best spring for her because of, as you mentioned, the knee injury, and just the preparation over the winter hasn't been the same preparation she's had the years before. So that's clearly impacted her. She did a phenomenal job again for Wiebes on stage 1, and I'm guessing, the intention was that Wiebes would walk away with stage 1 and stage 2. That's not what happened. I think stage 2 was a very exciting finish because of that. But yeah, it would be challenging. I mean, that situation there, to already lose so much time when you had GC ambitions, it would be hard. And I'm not saying that's why she lost so much time on the climb, but yeah, I really feel for Kopecky at this point in the season.
Yeah, it's also hard being Belgium and being a very good Belgium cyclist, because their media outlets can be very brutal. And yeah, I feel like Lotte, she always seems like she came across as like she deals with it very well, but at some point it must get to you just how harsh they can be in some ways, even when you, in your eyes, might be thinking you're going quite well, and then they can just come down and demolish all your confidence.
Well, I think both Wout and Lotte have copped it this year in the Belgian media for sure. And you're right, it's quite similar, I feel like, to the Aussies. What is it called? That tall poppy syndrome, where like when you're going really great, there's all the praise and the love, but as soon as there's some sort of inconsistency, they're ready to attack everything. But yeah, I think it's a small talking point, and I guess if we want to get stuck into the Tour de France, which is 2 months away, some people will be thinking, well, that's a big ambition for Kopecky, so what does that mean for SD Worx in general? going into that race, but I still think it's too soon to talk about that. But for me, there were definitely highlights from this race in terms of the GC, but also stages. Like, so happy to see Amanda Spratt back up there, really mixing it up and ending up with fourth on GC. Highlight for me was Mia Otterstad, just following her all season, already showing at the Tour Down Under that she was going to be on for a good year, I think, and then to pull off that World Tour win in such a classy way, to be able to follow Rusa and pull turns with her and then, take the finish was, I think, for me, the highlight of the tour.
Yeah, I think it was really nice to see as well. And also, she's not super young, like she's not old by any means. She's like 27, but it's really nice to see someone who has been in the sport for like a wee while now and like working for others, and then also just finding herself and getting those results for herself is really nice to see. Like, kind of shows that the work pays off and everything like that. So I thought it was really a really good race from her, and her time trial on the last day was also very good.
Yeah,
Yeah,
she ended
and
up
I think-
7th
Yeah.
on GC.
Yeah, the time trial, I feel like the stage win and the time trial were incredibly impressive from her. And I think the time trial, I turned my head a little bit more even because it is, the race of truth. And just to see her up there a second time, you can say that, okay, like her performance with the stage win wasn't in any way like a fluke. Like, she was in the right place at the right time, yes, but her strength to take that stage and then to follow it up with a solid time trial was really impressive. And I think, like, for me, for years, I've been singing the praises of Uno X Mobility because of how they organize their team, how they treat their riders, their goals within the team. And also, everyone knows that I love a team with a media, with a press officer who responds to text messages. So I love this team. And so it was so good to see them kind of getting their due in a way. Like, it's their first World Tour win as a team. And they've kind of been chipping away and finding their feet. It's taken them a really long time to find the balance of having young riders, having Scandinavian riders, and having riders that can win in big races. And they are kind of finally finding the right formula to the team makeup to have a team that is able to compete in these World Tour races. So I hope that this is the beginning of seeing them more present in the bigger races, because I think that they have a squad that can really take it to the bigger teams if they are able to use their riders in the right way. And I think with a rider like May, like, they have other riders on their team that I think can be really exciting in the future. And so this was, I was just like, it felt very validating seeing them win in a way, with everything that they've kind of put into the sport in the last couple of years.
And I feel like in general, this season in particular, they're just so much more present, right, in the race. You really notice Uno X now. And I mean, Katrine Allerud,
I think it is.
Yeah, she's been just super consistent this whole year too. So I'm the same as you, Abby. I'm really happy to see them up there and just achieving good things. And they've recently hired, I think, a new woman to be in charge of like high performance or something. So yeah, definitely doing all the right things.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's also good for the sport that more teams are winning and it's kind of shared along. It makes things a lot more entertaining, and it also just shows that the depth of the peloton in women's cycling is getting that bit bigger every year. And from talking to my friends who are still racing, racing's only getting harder. The bunch is getting more dangerous in some ways and a little bit more technical. And everyone, to win a race now, you have to be going well and you have to be good. There's no like fluke wins or given wins so much anymore. So it's really nice to see that Uno X, obviously all their work is paying off and they're coming out quite strong now.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that, like you mentioned, Spratty, Loren, I think that's one of the reasons I was so happy to see Spratty ride to fourth on the mountain stage and follow it up with like a decent enough time trial that she ended up fourth overall. She's a rider who's been in the peloton for such a long time and had so many setbacks, and coming into Little Trek a couple years ago now, like, we thought she was going to be one of their GC contenders, and she's really had to kind of step into a domestique role. And she's been incredible for Gaia and for their other, climbers. Her and Neve Fisher-Black have been such an awesome duo in a couple races this year already. But seeing her kind of be their GC rider in this race brought a smile to my face, because she's just such an incredible human being. And so we love when good people do well. And given what she's been through in the last 3 years even, but also for many years at this point, she just seems to always get knocked down in some way and find her way back up.
I think it's also really impressive to be going well and winning races and being high in GC 5 years ago, and then still being able to do it to this day is very impressive, because as I said, the bunch has changed so much and it has only got harder. And for you, the older you get, it gets to a point where you will start, it's harder to increase your power, and for her to keep increasing, to keep getting better, you have to keep getting better every year just to stay in the peloton. Then for her to keep staying like that, she climbed really well on the third stage. It was really nice to see. And you can tell she keeps a level head and just sets her own pace. And it was a good result.
Very good result.
Yeah, it was. I mean, compared to Julia, it was a stronger start list, I feel like. But I think in the, as well as Spratty did, and with Balsamo coming second, I feel like we've been quite hard on SD Worx in the last couple podcasts because we expect so much from them. And at a certain point, we need to be harder on Little Trek and expect a lot more from them, because they are also one of the best teams in the world. They've consistently ranked second behind SD Worx for many years now. And win-wise, they've had a ton of podium finishes this year. But win-wise, they are slipping a little bit. They are a little bit less present. And I think that I'm expecting more from them in the coming months. I'm hoping to see more from them, because they have such an incredible roster of riders. If they're not winning races, there's something isn't connecting within the team,
Yeah, I think it was quite a big loss for them to have Longo go to UE this year, because obviously she's last couple of years she was one of their main winners, especially if if Gaia or Sharon was having a bad day, Longo was always there to kind of get a semi-decent or still a very good result, which happened quite a bit. She was very good at kind of filling in if something happened in a race. But I think, they've changed quite a bit this year, I feel team dynamic wise. Their main leaders, I feel are Neve and Rihanna, who are two new people to the team. So it'd be really nice to see them maybe step up a little bit come the summer and get those results that their roster kind of deserves in that way.
Oh, I think Neve can probably have a really good result at the Giro or something like that. If given how she rode on the final day of the Vuelta, I think it's there. I think that the ability to finish on the podium of a Grand Tour is there for her, and it always has been. I think it's just when you look at a team with a roster like that, and they're not getting the results that kind of the riders on the team warrant, what you would on paper, what you would expect from those riders. I feel like it comes down to management sometimes, and that's maybe the team plan isn't going well. Maybe there's miscommunication or not great communication going into races, who is going to be a leader, for example, or who is going to what races. If riders aren't finding out soon enough what races they're going to, then their training can't be tailored to that. Maybe they haven't laid out, I don't know, but there are factors that can happen within management that will mean that the best riders on the team will show up to a race and maybe they didn't know until a week before, so their training isn't right or something like that. And I feel like that the team has been around for so long now. Maybe they're getting a little bit stale in their approach to racing and their approach to going into the races, because like you said, Anna, about British cycling, every once in a while team management needs a refresh, and Little Trek have kind of been going at racing with the same management since the beginning, and now things are changing. I think SD Worx kind of falls into the same column of has been racing for a really long time with the same management, And that can be a detriment to them sometimes.
Yep, very valid point.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah, I think it's also, I feel like, especially I've been in quite a lot of managers meetings now, and the sport's incredibly still on. I think I was maybe a little bit surprised at how male dominated it still is. Like when I go to these, like the DS meetings before a race, and then, like the bigger the race is, the more men there are in the room compared to the women, and also age wise, the men are all mostly in their late 40s, I feel like, or older. And yeah, I think sometimes a little fresh blood is not the worst thing in the world, and bringing in new perspectives, because cycling's a very traditional sport and it doesn't change quickly in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
I do wonder as well, Abby, I'm curious to gauge your opinion on this, that like with teams that do share, it's more common now between the teams that have men's and women's team to share staff, share resources, and even they're having some of the men's DSs now work on the women's side. And I had a conversation with one of, I won't say which team, a DS who had come from the men's peloton, and he was having a conversation with my colleagues about how he was frustrated with the way that women race. And I didn't want to say too much, but I was like, you do understand that the racing is different and you have to adapt as well to a certain degree.
Yeah, this is an interesting one because I've talked to Toms about this a lot, because I want him to, well, I don't want him to DS when he's done racing, but I think he would be incredible at it. I want him, if he does, to DS women. One, because he'd be on the road less than with the men's team, but also because I feel like he is a male that would do really well on the women's side. And he always says, I don't understand the racing. Like when he watches the races, he doesn't understand the tactics. And he'll be watching races like on the team bus while he's at the men's equivalent, texting me like, what is happening? Why are they doing this? Like, and it's really funny to me that someone who's so good at reading a race and is like very much his like best quality in racing is the tactics on the men's side, just cannot fathom what's going on in a women's race. And it is just so different. Like having crossover of staff, in a way it's good because then you can bring in like a new form of tactic into the race, and sometimes it works really well. But it is a completely different sport, the way that they're raced. Like you can't just have a director from a men's team just come into a women's race and expect to apply the same tactics and have a favorable outcome. Every once in a while it'll work, like every once in a while we have a stage of a Grand Tour where the breakaway goes and the sprinters team muck it up and the break ends up winning, which is like a thing that happens in men's racing more often, but it's not like a cookie cutter situation in terms of men's racing and women's racing. It just doesn't work.
Yeah. I think it's also really like knowing who the riders are and knowing what girls in the peloton, and like having a knowledge of the riders in the bunch is a really important skill for a DS as well. And if you're not used to the racing, if you're not used to like I've raced with a lot of these girls and I know them personally. So then you also have that inside knowledge, whereas like I wouldn't be able to go to a men's race and a lot of the riders I wouldn't know. You're just kind of presuming on their team how good they are. Whereas in the women's bunch, you have some girls in smaller teams who are very good and capable of winning, whereas it is quite different on the men's side.
And like if you are a director of a men's team with a women's equivalent and you're coming in to DS the women for a race, I feel like one of the biggest things with a director is knowing every rider that you're directing. Like the riders on your team, you have to know what each of those riders is good at, maybe what they aren't good at. You have to know what is going to make them race the best that they can. Like some riders do really well with positive encouragement. Some are a tough love situation. Like I feel like there are very few athletes that are actually benefit from tough love, but that's a different conversation. But like you have to know as a director exactly how to get the best out of your riders. And if you aren't a director for them all year long, then you probably aren't going to get the best out of them in one race, Yeah,
I completely agree with that. I feel like knowing like most part of DSing is like managing people's skill sets and managing their personalities off the bike is it's so important because they're also riders in quite a fragile state of mind when they're racing or when they're around a race and they're very tired. They spent so much time doing like training for this one thing, especially if the race goes badly, like dealing with them pre-race, during the race and post-race is very important because you can very easily tear someone down if you say like a slightly wrong thing, or you can build them up very easily by saying another small thing. I feel like de-essing is just managing people's personalities.
100%. But that's the best directors know that. And there are plenty of directors who don't know that.
I think this is also why a few years back Oz Cycling were trying something new where they wanted to have a DS for the men's team and a DS for the women's world's team for the whole year. So you had a pool of, say, 20 athletes who could potentially make the world's team. And then the idea was the DS would get to know all the riders, follow them through the racing in the year, so then they could make really informed decisions to the selection panel about who should go, but then also knowing how the dynamic of the team could work at a race situation and before showing up to the Worlds, having that relationship already, instead of just throwing together a bunch of women. Usually, I mean, for a lot of nations, it's a similar sort of team that goes to the World Championships. But to already have that personal relationship, I think, is really important. So everything you said is 100%.
Kind of going back to Little Trek losing Eliza, this was her first race back post-spring, and she's another one who had kind of a roller coaster of a spring. Like, she had 2 wins, neither of them World Tour, and obviously she won UA Tour, but she also had her crash at Flanders that she had a pretty bad concussion after and had to come back from that. She had illness at Strada, so she really had like a roller coaster of a spring. And this was the first race back, and I think she looked pretty good for like how the spring went and coming back in. She didn't win a stage. She was all over the front for multiple stages. She climbed well enough and finished in the top 3 overall. So it was a really good performance for her coming back into the peloton and with bigger goals on the horizon. Obviously, the Giro, coming into the Giro and being the defending champion and Italian is going to be a huge goal. So if that is her trajectory, then she's going in the right direction, I feel.
For sure. I think she's looking good for the Giro.
Yeah, I think it was probably I don't know if it was the original plan, but a good idea from UE for her not to do the first few Spanish races, seeing that she had that very hard crash at Flanders where she came down and hit her head, and then I think she did the Ardennes still, whereas like sometimes it's not always best racing so soon after your injuries, and yeah, it's probably quite nice that she had that reset. And yeah, for the month off racing she had, she looked quite good at Burgos, and especially on the second stage when UE were kind of pacing it a little bit after Lotta's crash. She looked very good in that climb, and then just before Marlon attacked.
Yeah. And then I think one of the last riders that we have to talk about in terms of Burgos and kind of going forward into the rest of the year is Yara Kastelein. Such an incredible performance on the third stage, but then she followed it up with another really strong performance in the time trial, and ended up third overall in the race. So like she won that tour stage back in 2023 when she got off the front, or she was in the break, and it was that really, really long stage, and she got in the break, and then the break stuck, and she was able to take that tour stage win. And that was kind of the first time that we really, on the road side of things, like her name was in everyone's minds. But I think this performance like backs up that performance, but takes it a step up. Like she's now one of Phoenix Deceuninck's like powerhouse riders, and going into the bigger stage races coming up, she's added to their firepower in a way that I think I'm curious to see how they use her along with Paulina Roarkis in the big stage races.
I think it was really nice to see her go well, and I was like a little bit surprised, and then I went back and looked at her results this year, and she's been going well all year. Like her spring, she was just always subtly there in the top 10 for a lot of the really big spring races, and I think she's really coming into her own on the road, and I think her time trial really backed up her performance the day before. We were staying with Marlon for so long. She was by far like she stayed with Marlon the longest, and it looked for a bit like that she could maybe stay with her the entire climb. So I think it's maybe gives Phoenix Koenig a lot of confidence going into the bigger tours in July.
Yeah, definitely. All right. I think we can wrap up talking about Burgos by talking a little bit more about the winner of the race, Reusser. Obviously, she had an incredible ride at La Vuelta, but this was a race without Demi, and I think there was a lot that we wanted to see come out of this race, and her being one of the GC contenders, but also factoring in her season last year where she crashed at Tour Flanders, she had horrendous injuries, came back for La Vuelta and at Zulia, and then didn't race again for the rest of the year, which included the Olympics where she was a favorite for the time trial, and also her home world championships in Switzerland. Just like a horrible year for her with the injuries and then COVID and then complications from COVID. So she was out for most of last year. And I wrote a piece on Saturday after the climbing stage about how she was one of the biggest transfers of the year, leaving SD Worx-Protime to go to Movistar, but was maybe a bit overlooked in the fact that she was out of the peloton, so kind of a unseen, out of sight, out of mind situation. And then also there were so many other transfers that I think the combination of her not being around and also like Elisa leaving Trek and Demi leaving FDJ and Labus leaving DSM and all of these things, like all the transfers and her being gone meant that we didn't talk a ton about her leaving to go to Movistar. But now she's back in the peloton. We didn't really know how she would go, but she was already going quite well at the beginning of the year at Valenciana. And now she's won Vuelta a Burgos, and she's not only won it, but she's won it like convincingly. Second on a stage, first on the next stage, and then she won the time trial by 6 seconds over Labus. And I think she's really set herself up for being one of the top GC contenders for the rest of the year.
Yeah, personally, I'm just really, really happy that Marlon's going well because she's a very lovely person. And it's really nice to see her finally getting like the results that she deserves, because I think maybe some people were quite surprised that she's performing so well. But when we were on SD Worx in 2023, she was such a strong and such a pinnacle part of the team. Like Damie wouldn't have got a lot of her results without Marlon helping her. It's shown in the Ardennes. And the fact that she won all three in 2023 and she's not really performed as well in the Ardennes since then. I think Marlon is a big factor in that. And last year was her first it was the first time SD Worx was probably going to give her opportunity, and for her not to have that year because of injury and because of that horrific crash was really, and I know a home worlds in Zurich was one of her biggest goals, and that is really sad that she wasn't able to race there. So it's just, I'm really happy that she's kind of had this comeback and she's performing so well. And I never doubted Marlon and her GC ambitions because I like training with her in camp. She's such a strong rider and she's got a really good head on her as well. And she's just determined at like wanting to win, especially in the fact that she came into the sport quite late. And I think that was the main reason she left SD Worx, is the fact that she is on the older side and wants that opportunity and wants to see how she can perform before she ends up retiring, because she doesn't want to spend the rest of her career working for others. So I think it was a very good move for her to go to Movistar.
100%. I do wonder if people forget her results of 2023, going back to your point, Anna, because you could see even when she was working for Demi that year that like she had that potential. I mean, she walked away with GC wins. She was even third overall at Romandy. She had such a good year that you could definitely see that she has the engine for it. So yeah, I'm really curious to see how it all sort of pans out at the Giro, because that's her next big goal, right?
Yeah, I think she plans on doing the Giro and the Tour, and I think I feel like she's only going to get better this year. Well, I'm hoping, because I think it will be a really good battle between her, Anna van der Breggen, Damie, and Elisa Longo Bigini, especially at the Tour, or I suppose Lotte might be doing the Tour as well. But I think this year it's been really exciting with the change of teams with all the riders. Makes the sport a bit more interesting.
Like the spring during the spring, there was like so much confusion with all the changing teams, like what what riders' roles were. And I think like the racing in the spring was good, but we've seen better spring racing before. I feel like the last couple years we've been really spoiled with some very excellent spring classics campaigns. And this year I felt like it left a bit wanting. And coming into the stage races, I feel like now we're really seeing the benefits of all of the transfers. Like now it's like, okay, this is what we were expecting for the spring, and we're getting it now. Like all the teams that are kind of coming to the fore with these strong riders that have left teams like SD Worx and gone on and are elevating the teams that they've joined, like Demi with FDJ and now Marlon with Movistar.
And it just feels in general that, like, I don't know if it's this year more than ever, that more teams have proper GC teams. Like there are clear GC favorites, but there are GC contenders too in more teams than I think I've ever experienced.
Yeah.
You know, it's not just like 3 teams where that's going to be the podium. I think it's quite spread now.
Yeah, I think that's also the fact that the depth in the peloton is increasing every year, because you've got the likes of people like Talita de Jong coming up, and she had a really good year last year. And then also in the fact that a lot of like SD Worx kind of split up. I think that really benefited women's cycling and benefited like more teams having that GC power, which is nice. And yeah, I think it's only beneficial for women's sport.
All right, let's move on. We're just going to really briefly touch on Tour Britain, which is our next World Tour stage race coming up, and then we can wrap up this episode with our obsessions. Tour Britain Women, formerly the Women's Tour, is our next 4-day stage race. We've got you're the perfect person to have on for this because Glasgow's in the final stage. The first stage on Thursday is a bit of potentially a sprinters race, but it goes through North York Moors National Park, so it's going to be just like gorgeous. The live coverage is going to be stunning. It's a short stage, only 85 kilometers, and the final 20K is basically a rolling downhill into the finish. But the finish is along the coast, so there could be a little bit of wind. We'll see. And the roads are quite narrow and very tacky. Like we've talked previous years about, the roads in the UK are just like, they're not fun roads to ride on. Yeah. They grab your wheel. Yes. The second stage is going to be a really good one. It finishes with kind of 2 circuits of this really hilly road around a coastal town in kind of the same area, Saltburn by the Sea. So that one finishes with like a 14% uphill, 800-meter uphill kick after just constant pitching and rolling for the final 30 kilometers. So that one is going to be one of the bigger GC days. The third stage has a lot more climbing. It's the highest elevation, but the final 15K is all downhill basically, or like a gradual downhill. So it could be a GC day. It could be a sprint stage, especially if Weavis is in the group. I think the climbs in this stage are not hard enough to get rid of someone like her, especially how she's riding this year. There's like 3 major climbs, but none of them really last for long enough or are steep enough to shed her, and they're spread out throughout the day. The finish of that one is the more interesting to me. It's super technical. They come into a town and take like a sharp left hand, and then there's a right hand bend, and then there's a really sharp left hand into a left hand bend, but they cross a bridge, and the bridge is really, really narrow, and the finish is a cobbled finish. So that one's going to be hectic, and we've seen some really hectic finishes in the Women's Tour before, and this is definitely one of them. This is one where teams are going to be setting it up really, really early to be able to control the final 2 kilometers of the race. And yeah, it'll be the strongest team that comes out on top on that day if it does come into a bunch. It could also be a breakaway, but I think that's not what I'm expecting. The final stage is an 8-kilometer circuit around Glasgow. They're going to do 10 circuits of an 8-kilometer circuit, and it's not I was hoping it would be similar to the Worlds because that was just such an amazing, but it is not. It's a triangle basically. And there is a climb in it. And I think that it will wear on the riders as the race goes on, but it's only 3% average. And it'll be kind of a crit, basically like a large crit, for the final stage. So overall, I think we're looking at a lot of sprinters to kind of be in the race, but also like hometown favorites. Kat Ferguson, for example, Anna Henderson, who this was her first race back after just a horrendous start to the 2024 season, and she did quite well in it. And I think she's hoping to do the same this time. Lizzie Dignan's final Tour of Britain this year, which she's won it in the past. So this will be a big one for her because it's close to home and her last time racing in the UK, probably. Wow, that like hurt me to say. That was like a gut punch. Kristen Faulkner is going to be there. So if there's a rider who's going to try to get away on any of the climbs and the finales of races, there's Kristen Faulkner to watch. And Ruby Roseman-Gannon, who took that incredible final stage victory of the Tour of Britain last year. The picture, one of my favorite pictures in cycling that's ever happened, with like you had Majerus rolling across the line thinking she'd probably won it, Kopecky looking at Ruby Roseman-Gannon's wheel like, oh shit. Like just one of the best pictures ever. So a lot to look forward to at the Tour of Britain this year, I think.
Yeah, I think it's going to be quite an interesting course, and it's really nice because I'm pretty sure this is the first time they've ever gone to Scotland. So now it can officially be called a proper Tour of Britain, whereas before it was like a Tour of England and Wales. So it's really nice that they are going up to Scotland. And the second stage is actually the course that we've done for our nationals for the past 2 years. And it's a really nice course near in Saltburn by the Sea. It's quite punchy. It's very punchy, and the finish is very beautiful. It's like a right on the beach, and it's a steep like 2K climb that Pfeiffer has dominated the past few years. So I think that's going to be a really good finish, and I feel like it's probably one for someone like Lorena, who really does well at those very short, steep climbs coming into a sprint finish. And I think potentially maybe her for the entire GC, because like you said, a lot of the stages, well, she's very good at most things, which helps her a lot. And a lot of the stages do kind of favor the sprinters.
Without one big like mountain, which you're not really going to find in the UK, this does look like a Weebus race. Like it looks like a race that will come down to seconds like we've seen in the past for a Tour of Britain. Like random stage, long range breakaway that sticks, solo rider. I think that's how Lizzie won it also when this was her first huge win after having Orla. And I think it was with a long range breakaway that she won, solo break. Yeah. So it does happen. It does happen in this race.
The UK are pretty good with the breakaways because their roads are quite twisty, and like you said, you're out of sight, out of mind very quick. And the fact that the roads are grippy kind of makes the racing a bit harder, and it does favour people like Lizzie, who kind of grits her teeth a little bit and just battles on.
And she's back to living in the UK now, so maybe we'll see a final win from her at the Tour of Britain. It'd be awesome. I would cry for sure. Oh my God. All right. Well, let's wrap it up. We'll be back to talk about that next week. And I gave Anna I gave her a heads up about how we finish the podcast. So I'm excited to see what you've been obsessed with lately. But Loren and I could go first if you want to like kind of gauge what it is about.
Yeah, I'll see how outlandish my obsessions are. So you guys can go first now. I might amend mine.
Anything. Like it can be sometimes the most boring thing, and then sometimes the most interesting, and sometimes shocking. Like, I didn't realize you were into that. But not shocking, like good shocking, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Surprising.
Not jump
shocking.
scare. Yeah.
No, jump skip. That's a good one. I guess obsession, I don't know if that's the right word. I have had a little bit of time in the evening because my husband was away for work. So like to wind down after the crazy day and like putting the kids to bed, I would only have enough energy to watch one episode or something. And there was a 6-part mini-series on Netflix called The Secrets We Keep. It's a Danish TV show, and I highly recommend it. It was #1 in Belgium for quite a few weeks, actually. And it's just, it's like a series that basically explores, the themes of privilege, class, and racialization of domestic work in Denmark. And basically, an au pair goes missing from a very wealthy family, and it's just like all about the investigation into that and unpacking the things about the neighbors that, that's it, the secrets we keep, the things that start to come out, and it unravels, and just how horrible it is. And you feel a little bit sick. It was really good. I really enjoyed the TV show, and I watched it in Danish and just sort of read the subtitles. But you can dub it, of course, in English.
You're like one of the, I can't remember. I mean, there's like memes about it. Like women, can't go out for runs by themselves, are constantly like a little bit on edge in public, and then wind down by watching true crime.
They listen to like the most depraved podcast about like all these homicides. But
just before you go to bed
by themselves in the dark.
No, but it's like, I'm watching what's the other TV show now? The Last of Us, and that's I get pretty scared by that sort of stuff. And then when you're home alone, I mean, I have 2 small children, but then when I have to go into my bed alone, I'm like, why did I just watch that? That's like the worst possible thing. I'm going to dream about it now and probably wake up terrified. So anyway, that's my recommendation for the week. Not so much an obsession, it's a recommendation.
Okay. Mine's an obsession. I am back in Helena, Montana, which is some of the best mountain biking I've ever experienced, and I'm back on my mountain bike. So it's been a year since I rode my mountain bike, since I found out I was pregnant. It's awesome. I like always kind of forget how much I love to ride a bike outside, and then ride a bike outside and I'm like, oh, this is why I love it. I forgot. So it's been really, really nice to get back on the mountain bike. And I even surprised myself by taking some QOMs, which means very little in Helena, Montana. Like the level isn't exactly, it's not like taking a QOM in Girona, but I was impressed with myself, and I'm just, obsessed with riding my mountain bike again. It's really great.
But Abby, you live in Andorra, so I imagine like is there not a bike park up there?
There's some decent mountain biking. They have the World Cup up in Andorra, but it's on the other side of the country from me. So it's like a 30-minute drive away. The mountain biking where I am is horrendous. Like it isn't really, like you'd have to have it. All the mountain bikers I see that aren't Tom Pidcock have e-bikes. And then there's Tom Pidcock like ripping around where like no one else who has a mountain bike is able to ride. Like, I was on like a trail run once, and he like came riding down this trail that was like for sure not, like no one else has ever ridden a mountain bike on that trail.
I also feel like the mountain biking in Andorra is a bit like it's either all or nothing. And there's some quite techy stuff, and maybe after the first time you've been mountain biking in a while, it's not good to be face planting down a rock face.
No, here it's like really, really whooshy, very rockless.
Just fast.
Yeah, just like
fast, fun,
flowy. Yeah.
All right, finish us off. What have you got?
I feel like I could probably call it an obsession. Me and my boyfriend watched this TV show within 2 days, and it was the 4 seasons. It's like a new TV show on Netflix.
Oh,
yeah. Tina Fey and Steve Carell. It was really good. It's really funny, and it's just easy watching if you want to wind down. It's just a funny friendship dynamic, and that's probably my obsession and recommendation.
That's an interesting one coming from a 24-year-old, because I feel like all the reviews that I've read about it, it's like all like people who are in their like 40s who are like, yeah, I really like this, but I think it's a very specific audience. Like every review I've read has said that like
no one under Abby.
Maybe it's my old soul coming out. I don't know. I feel like you can relate to, maybe the older generation can relate to a lot of the stuff in it as well, but I feel like all of it's pretty relatable in like friendship, because it's basically just like a friendship group and the dynamics of that, and when one of them decides that they don't really want to stay in the marriage anymore, and it's kind of it's very good actually, and it is. I feel like because I think Tina Fey and Steve Carell might have produced or written it, something like that. But yeah, they're funny people, so it's a funny show.
Okay, well, noted. It's been on my radar. Yeah, add it to the list. All right. Well, Anna, thank you so much for joining the podcast. It's been awesome to have your perspective on the pod, and long time listeners will remember you from Neve Fisher Black's audio diaries back in the day. So really great to have you back on the podcast. And Loren, thanks for just being my partner.
Yeah, it's good to be back. But yeah, thanks so much, Anna, and good luck for the upcoming races. Look forward to hearing more about it.
Yeah, thanks very much. Yeah, I've enjoyed the chit chat. It's been good fun.
This episode was produced, edited, and mixed by Will Jones at Red Bricks Media.
Hey, Dane Cash here with just a quick message to say that if you like this podcast, or really any of our podcasts, you should become an Escape Collective member. Head on over to escapecollective.com/member and sign up. Sign up so that we keep making these podcasts. And sign up if you like exclusives. If you're into the racing stuff, we're on the ground at the Classics, at the Tour de France. Lots of exclusive stories there. We've also got things like Geek Warning. We're breaking the stories on the tech side. Ronan's got the performance process. There's all sorts of things that you're getting access to by becoming a member. And it's pretty easy to do. Again, just head over to escapecollective.com/member. Sign up, support everything we're doing here at Escape Collective.